So you say, oh, yes, and it started. What was national efficiency? Well, we got causes, I've got a definition, and I've got consequences. So what? Maybe I'll start with the definition. So there was a fear in Britain that Britain was going to fall behind its imperial rivals because its competitors, i.e. Germany, was especially an emergent and rising power, were enacting strategies which seemed to make their countries run more efficiently. Okay, so it was fears that Britain was in decline as a world power. Okay, this meant taking steps to improve the quality of their workforce. Okay, for Britain to maintain its reputation as the industrial powerhouse of Europe, it had to ensure its working class was fit to work. Now we know, because we looked previously, in our last lesson, at the social and economic conditions which the working class people of Britain faced, which is why Keir Hardie was a critic of empire and especially a critic of the capitalist system in Britain and how it didn't benefit the working classes, how you have uneducated people working in mines, that there was no welfare system, right, to keep people out of poverty. So what you actually see, with the British population is that men are quite short. Okay, they're shorter than they were right at the beginning of the 1800s. Okay, so at the end of the 1800s, they're shorter. They're not thriving, not doing well because they live in slum conditions. Many people have gone to the cities to chase wealth, but have not found it. Okay, and you're getting people live like 6, 10 to a house. Okay, you're getting people all sleep in the same bedroom. Disease is rampant. Disease is spread very easily. Okay, at this point, there's no great sanitation. Right, so people are I think you'd know from your GCSEs that you have like the Broad Street pump, okay, issue, that cholera is spread around, okay, because people are putting all their feces into the Thames, but getting their drinking water out of the Thames. All right, so you wouldn't drink water if it had feces in it, but people are doing that all the time in London. Okay, so this is during the 1800s. Okay, this is until Joseph Balzagetti builds the sewers. This is just one example, okay, of how people were failing to thrive. We also know that the bourgeois classes in Britain, although they're making huge amounts of money through trade, were not necessarily sharing that money, okay, with the working classes. So you had a low-income society. Everything was maximized for profit. Now, if you have working classes not looked after, how can you then have a standing army? If men are not fit enough, because they live in slum and impoverished conditions, they're not going to be physically strong, are they? Okay, so what you actually see in the slums is an extremely high death rate, okay, at a young age. Okay, so I think the average life expectancy in Victorian cities, in impoverished areas like the East End and in Liverpool and places in Liverpool, could be around 30 years old. Now, I'm not saying that you got to 30 and pop your clogs. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that therefore infant mortality rates were extremely high. Also, if you've got men getting ill and sometimes dying at a young age just through cholera and typhus epidemics, then all that training you've done for people to work in factories as a businessman becomes remiss. So what is figured out is actually you need to have a strong workforce, okay, so that people are maintain skills and don't lose those skills and can work for a longer amount of time. Okay, so it makes sense from a business point of view, but it also makes sense from a military point of view. And we discovered this with the Boer War. So when I say the Boer War, I'm talking about the Second Boer War. Okay, so in the Second Boer War from 1899 to 1902, 40% of the British volunteers were turned away because they weren't physically fit enough to pass the test. All right, so that is saying us that men are not thriving. Okay, 56% of men were less than 5'6". That's even shorter than me, guys. Okay, so 56% of men were less than 5'6" in height in 1900, compared to only 10% in 1845. Look at that difference. Yeah, something's happened. Something's happened over those 55 years. That's very bad. Okay, you can see that the capitalist model in Britain clearly hadn't benefited the proletarian class, the working classes there, right? And the Boers held out for 2.5 years against the British Empire. All right. So there's serious worries that Germany, an emergent power, is going to eclipse and replace the British Empire. All right. So with these serious worries, they just have to think about the systems in their country. Okay. So the British powers that be reflect. Okay. Why are so many men unfit? Okay. Well, they knew the causes. So what you actually see is modern infrastructure change. And this is where men like Radical Joseph Chamberlain came in, especially in Birmingham, when he cleared out the slums, okay? And he introduced public baths, gas and water works. He was called a gas and water works socialist, Okay, so what you actually start to see in this time period is some people who are forward thinking, like Radical Joseph Chamberlain. And he was called Radical Joseph Chamberlain because he instituted these socialist schemes in Birmingham before the rest of the government did. Okay, so he does this in Birmingham, and it's seen as a really good kind of prototype because it really works out well. Life expectancy in Birmingham really rises as a consequence as the investment that he put into working class people. So these are some of the consequences, and these are just two of many others. Okay, so first and foremost, an Education Act was put in, and in 1906, a Free School Meals Act was also introduced as well because attendance was so low. All right, Imperial College London was established in 1907 to secure British scientific and technological excellence. This because it sounds really weird, but Britain had become too dependent on its empire. Okay, so if we needed rubber, well, we just got it from Singapore. Whilst in France and Germany, they developed a synthetic rubber because they didn't have the natural resource. Yeah, so they were able to create rubber synthetically, which made them more efficient, more advanced. Okay, scientifically. So Britain's fallen behind militarily. Britain's fallen behind. In Germany, they introduced old age pensions and a social welfare network in the late 1800s. Britain still hadn't done that. So you see, other countries were taking a more kind of modern step towards developing a state which was interventionist and had a welfare scheme for both its young and its old. Okay, Britain hadn't done that yet. Britain was falling behind the times. So national efficiency is a complete change of thought. Okay, we're going to have to do the very systems in our country, the very way we think about everything has to change, or Britain is going to fall behind. That's national efficiency, guys. Okay. Right. Stop recording. There we go. Stop recording.